yourself a glass of water, a tea. Get your pets to join you like a cuddly bunny who sits in your lap as you watch. Or save this video for later, 7 a.m. when you're done work. Whatever it is that you see fit. Get ready to relax and enjoy the very creepy tale that I have for you all tonight. Tonight I will be having another vodka soda. Actually, who am I, right? Just living for these neutral juices. I wish I was sponsored. I want an alcohol company to sponsor me so badly, but no. But I mean, these are delicious and I'm obsessed with them lately, so let's just pour a nice glass of this. I apologize for my squeaky chair in this video. I love the after effect of just the sound of the fizz after you pour one of these. So good. So good. Alright. Cheers. Oh yeah. That's good. Okay, so let's talk about the alphabet murders. So if you've not heard of this before, the alphabet murders are a series of child murders that occurred between 1971 and 73 in Rochester, New York. So if that makes you uncomfortable, especially anything with children, warning now. This literally the entire video is based around that, so maybe next week's video would be best for you. But we're going to start things off with the story of Carmen. So at 4:20 p.m. on November 16th, 1971, a 10-year-old Puerto Rican child named Carmen Golden disappeared while returning home from an errand in Rochester, New York. According to eyewitnesses, Carmen entered the pharmacy and her grandmother had instructed her to visit on West Main Street, but she'd left the store upon learning that the prescription she'd been instructed to go pick up had not been processed, right? So, informing the store owner, Jack Corbin, that she'd had to go, she was then observed entering the parking lot closer to the pharmacy. Carmen was reported missing then around 7:50 p.m. So approximately 50 minutes later, after Carmen had exited the pharmacy, scores of motorcyclists driving along Interstate 490 observed the child naked from the waist down. She was running from a reversing vehicle believed to be a dark-colored Ford Pinto hatchback, frantically waving her arms and shouting in an attempt to flag down a passing vehicle. At least one of these witnesses had observed Carmen submissively being led back to the vehicle by her abductor. 2 days later, let's segue. If you saw that, would you not chase that car down immediately? I would just be all over that, but I don't know. I guess other people were just like, oh, mention it later, maybe. I'd be all over that, but anyway. So 2 days later, 2 teenage boys discovered Carmen's partially nude body in a gully not far from Interstate 490 and close to the village of Churchville. This location was approximately 12 miles from where Carmen had last been seen alive. Her coat was discovered in Culvert, which was about 300 feet from where her body was found. Her trousers were only discovered on November 30th, close to the service road where numerous motorcyclists had seen her attempting to escape her abductor. An autopsy discarded at the base of a hillside along an access road to State Route 104 in Webster, approximately 7 miles from Rochester. The position of her body indicated she had likely been thrown from a moving vehicle, with her body rolling down the embankment. An autopsy had revealed that she had been sexually assaulted, then strangled from behind with a ligature, most likely a belt. And in the previous murder, the child was strangled by hands. It was manual strangulation. But Wanda had several defensive wounds, indicated that she had fought her murderer. In addition, her body had been redressed after death. The autopsy revealed traces of semen around her body, and furthermore, several strands of white cat fur were found upon her clothing, and they did not own a cat or pet with that fur color, which was interesting to find. As been the case with Carmen, investigators established an anonymous telephone hotline, in addition to distributing numerous flyers throughout Rochester, appealing for information like, please let us know what's going on here. A reward for $10,000 then was put out to the public for any information that could lead to the arrest and conviction of Wanda's murderer. Police inquiries produced eyewitnesses who informed investigators that as Wanda had walked home from the delicatessen on the evening of April 2nd, they had observed the child standing alongside the passenger of a door of a light brown vehicle, or a large brown vehicle, She was seen conversing with the driver, and the eyewitness was unable to get a clear view of the occupant of that vehicle. Sorry, my dog keeps huffing and puffing in the background. Anyway, another individual who contacted investigators following the installation of the anonymous hotline informed investigators that she had observed a man forcing a red-haired girl matching Wanda's description into a light-colored Dodge Dart on Conkey Avenue between 5:30 p.m. and 6 o'clock p.m. in the evening of her disappearance. The Rochester Police Department dismissed any suggestion of a link between the murders of Carmen and Wanda, although a sheriff's sergeant who had been assigned to investigate Carmen's murder, which at this stage was still open, although very largely inactive, was reassigned to the task and implemented the investigation of Wanda's murder. So in September of 1973, local television network WOKR announced plans to broadcast a televised reconstruction of Wanda's abduction. I hate that this arm is there, but what are you gonna do? Where am I again? Sorry. Abduction and subsequent recovery of her body. This 30-minute episode would broadcast on October 21st, accompanied by public appeals for witnesses to contact authorities. Although this program resulted in the Rochester Police Department receiving over 200 calls from the public, none of those calls were useful, and no leads were even gained from them. If I was a parent at this time, I would be mortified of my child going and doing any errands for me. I remember back in the day, my grandma would have me run to the store and grab her things, my mother. But if this was going on in my city, in my town, my child I'm putting him on a leash. I don't know, maybe that's dramatic, but you know what I mean? My eyes would be on them. force trauma to her body, and had been raped, strangled to death from behind with a ligature, possibly a thin rope, which is all very similar to every single reoccurrence, right? Numerous strands of, yet again, white cat fur were found upon her clothing, and leaf samples matching foliage where her body was discovered heavy rain, which is an interesting fact, and all whose bodies were discovered within nearby towns, but not the exact town. The body of each girl had been discovered either fully clothed or partially clothed to an expressway location usually, and typically all locations were able to be accessible to a vehicle, so maybe the person drove them up to the curb and pushed them out, right? And sort of just discarded. Each child was very short in height, and all three girls were raped before being strangled to death. In addition, all three were known for being outcasts, lonely amongst their peers, and furthermore, the stomach contents of both Wanda and Michelle revealed that both girls had ingested food just very shortly prior to their murders. And those two girls as well were redressed after their murders and rape. Now, both contemporary and current investigators had stated that the possibility of each victim being selected just based on the fact that it was like Michelle, Mayonnaise, Wanda, like the WWMMCC said that it was an extremely unlikely reason that is why they were chosen as a victim. Just extremely unlikely, but was a weird coincidence, right? Alphabet murders, that was quite bizarre to a lot of people, but in the newspapers it was something that they definitely talked about. Some investigators believe that although the murders of Wanda and Michelle had been committed for sure by the same person who had lured them to their death, Carmen, however, it was strongly suggested that they did not know this person, as it was much more of a forceful situation, and people made it very clear that what they were witnessing was massive distress, not like this uncomfortable level of she could have known this person. No, it is believed that they did not know this individual. Now, although he's called the alphabet murders because of the names, the fact, it seems very just random that the names did end up like that. Could it have maybe been something if he knew them for sure? Maybe. Definitely a possibility, but for an offender to pre-select his victims for this incidental reason would likely involve him stalking his individual for an extensive period of time, thus increasing the risk of them being noticed, right? But that's just what investigators say. So anyways, that is a lot of what was happening, going on with the girls. But what about the suspects? Because there obviously was some, right? So Miguel Golden. Yes, in the case of Carmen, her uncle Miguel was considered by investigators to be a very strong suspect in their murder. Miguel was the brother of Carmen's father, and following the separation from Carmen's parents, he had formed a relationship with Carmen's mother, being known to Carmen as Uncle Miguel. Typically, on occasions, Carmen walked to the pharmacy to collect family prescriptions. She had been accompanied by her grandfather, however, usually Felix. Although on the date of her disappearance, Carmen had been pleading with her grandparents to be allowed to walk unaccompanied. Just weeks prior to her abduction and murder, her uncle was known to have purchased his first car, closely matching the vehicle seen by eyewitnesses reversing on Interstate 490 in pursuit of this child. Investigators did conduct a search of his vehicle shortly after her murder, discovering the interior and exterior had been extensively cleaned, which is interesting. The trunk had been washed out with a very strong cleaning solution. Questioning of the dealership, which had recently sold Miguel the trunk, had revealed that it had not been washed prior to sale. Moreover, a doll belonging to Carmen was found Rochester. This guy is so suspicious, right? He relocated then from Rochester to Puerto Rico just 4 days after the murder of his niece. Investigators did travel to San Juan to question him in March of 1972. Although local newspapers, I cannot stop yawning. Although local newspapers published articles detailing police's intentions to question him, resulting in Miguel fleeing from the authorities, which is suspicious, but hey. Miguel had then surrendered to the authorities on March 26 and agreed to be extradited to face questioning to go back. He was unable to provide a credible alibi for his movements on the date of her murder, and no individual could be located to corroborate his claims regarding his whereabouts. So, despite the strong circumstantial evidence attesting to his guilt, no physical evidence was located at the crime scene or from his vehicle that could link him to the murder. He then committed suicide in 1991 at the age of 44 after an incident of domestic violence in which he shot and wounded both his wife and brother. So that's interesting. Seems like a pretty intense suspect to me. But let's keep going on about the others. So then there's Dennis Termini, one individual that was considered a very strong suspect, whom was a 25-year-old Rochester firefighter. Dennis was a prolific serial offender known as the garage rapist, who is known to have committed a minimum of 14 rapes of teenage girls and young women between 1971 and 73. He was known for having a beige vehicle and similar description of the vehicle observed by eyewitnesses of the abductions. Moreover, he was known to have lived at an address on Bach Street, close to where Michelle had last been seen alive. He was known to have committed 14 rapes. I would have been talking to this guy that day. But anyway, 5 weeks after the death of the final victim of the Alphabet murders on January 1st, 1974, Dennis is known to attempt to have abducted a teenage girl at gunpoint. He's known for that. Again, get this guy right away and talk to him. Anyway, he had fled the scene. The teenager refused to cease screaming, so he fled the scene because she was, yelling so much, and shortly thereafter had abducted another potential victim. Although on this occasion he was pursued by the police, in which Dennis had then committed suicide by shooting himself in the head. A subsequent forensic examination of Dennis's vehicle had then revealed that there was traces of white cat fur on his car. So that's interesting. But anyway, maybe a lot of people have white cats, I don't know. Seems pretty... Both of these men seem very likely suspects. It's pretty intense. So in January of 2007, his body was exhumed to obtain DNA evidence for comparisons of the semen samples that was recovered on Wanda's body. The result did, however, confirm that he was not her murderer. However, no physical evidence from the bodies of Carmen or Michelle existed to compare with his DNA. Then there is Kenneth Bianchi. So, Kenneth, at the time of the murders, worked as an ice cream vendor in Rochester. He was known to have worked at locations close to the first 2 murder scenes. Kenneth had relocated from Rochester to Los Angeles in 1976, and between 77 and 78, he and his cousin Angelo had committed the Hillside Strangler murders of 10 girls and young women between the ages of 12 and 28. I've never heard of that one. Maybe I'll do a story